Which means that I look at the things that we can do to make our processes easier. Work smarter, not harder is one of my focus areas in everything that we do. So I want to bring that to the city. I've lived in Pensacola for 5 years now, like on the dot 5 years, which is super exciting. And I plan to live here for more than that. I love Pensacola and I'm very passionate about Pensacola, which is why being part of this team means so much to me, and being part of each of your journey within the city, within Pensacola, is so important to me as well. So I appreciate y'all opening your lives to me and letting me kind of dig deep into the work that you're doing. And as follow-up from this, since this is the second and again last leadership meeting, I will send out a follow-up, just a couple of follow-up action items that I would like for all of our leaders to take. It will help with the recommendations that I'm going to make, and it'll just be focused on a lot of the things that we talked about today. If you have questions throughout, please raise them. Again, this is a very informal setting. I do ask that you guys be mindful of talking into the microphone. This is being streamed. You'd be surprised how many people were so excited during last Friday's session. I got a lot of feedback from people that were like, this is great. I'm so glad that we're getting to hear this. So don't get nervous on me, because I will tell you I can't hear you. Please pull your microphone up. So any questions before we get started? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and break the ice, because I want each of you to go around and I want you just to share who you are and the department you're representing, so that we just have a chance to, number one, break the ice and get people talking, and number two, just make sure everyone knows who everyone is. Would you like to start?
Awesome. Yes.
Perfect.
Edward Sisson.
There you go.
In the microphone, Human Resources. Glad to be here.
Chuck Walters, Battalion Chief, B-Watch, Pensacola Fire.
Robbie Weekly, Building Inspections.
Annie Blockson, Fire Marshal, Pensacola Fire Department.
Cedric King, Pensacola Fire Department, A-Watch Battalion Chief.
Tommy Leiter, Pensacola Police Department.
Jimmy Donahoe, Pensacola Police Department.
Jimmy, thank you for coming to the table. I was missing you.
Derek Pratt, Sea-Watch Battalion Chief, Pensacola Fire Department.
Kevin Chrisman, Captain, Pensacola Police Department.
Barbara Scott Payne, I'm part of Quint Studer's staff.
Yvette McClellan, Budget Manager, Finance Department.
Dennis Fleming, Department of Sanitation.
Don Creer, Pensacola City Council, and I'm really glad Alabama got their butts together.
Somebody.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but me too.
Amy Miller, Port Director.
Clark Merritt, Port.
Brenda Cahaley, Technology Resource Manager.
Steve Davis, I'm a captain with the Pensacola Police Department.
Renee Pierre Robinson, Classic Comp Analyst, Human Resources.
Hope Lunsford, Communications Manager for the Pensacola Police Department.
George Foss, Pensacola Fire Training and Safety.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any other leaders that have just joined us? If you guys want to introduce yourselves. Perfect. All right, ladies.
Helen Gibson, CRA Administrator.
And Victoria D'Angelo, Assistant CRA Administrator.
Perfect. Thank you guys again for joining. So let's go ahead and jump in. As you saw from the agenda, our focus today is on goals and accountability. One of the things that I know I've talked with each of you about is what are the goals, what are your priorities for your departments? And one of the things that I found in my line of work is one of the very first things that you should ever do if you're a consultant or a coach going into an organization is find out what are the goals of the organization. And so in doing that, oftentimes what I find, especially in areas like the city, but also when I work in healthcare, there's a lot of different tiers, a lot of different structures, and sometimes a lot of different facilities, that the department knows what their goal is, the single leader knows what their goal is, but that's often not cascaded outside of that. And I know I've had this open conversation and dialogue with several of you already, but that's what I wanted to start to do with these conversations. And ideally, one of my recommendations will be moving forward that we have more of these leadership type forums when we're all coming together. But I would love just to have the conversation of what mission-based goals look like for each of you. I know lots of you have sent me data and information that I've requested based on your goals, but I think it'd be great in this forum just for us all to go around, and it doesn't have to be everyone. Again, I'm not going to force you to talk, but in this session, I do want it to be much more about collaboration. So I would love just to hear from each of you. When you think about your mission-based goals, what is one of the top 1 or 2 mission-based goals that you have for your department? And I want you to share that with each other because it's really cool just to hear. There are a lot of things that may sound very similar and really kind of bring up more of that collaboration. So I'm going to step back and I just want you guys to share, one or two of your top mission-based goals for your department.
I think we really press hard our core values, the courtesy, integrity, professionalism. It's on the side of all of our police cars. It's on our business card. It's written on the walls in the police department. It's the first lesson that our new hires get when they first get hired. They're promoted to police officer. They're all in the same room. And the command staff, it's me and my captains. It's the first lesson that they'll get from us. And it's those core values, the courtesy, the integrity, and then the professionalism. And I think we follow through with that constantly. It's just this ongoing, and I think that's why we do a very good job with our public relations and that kind of stuff. But a big part of that goes to the courtesy. That's most of the feedback we get from the public is just how nice our officers are. I think it's getting that core value the first day and then following through with it the whole time.
And as a small follow-up question to that, and it's kind of a loaded question, do you guys measure that, like using customer satisfaction surveys?
We are fans of, we do the Haas, well, I say we don't do it. When we get that Haas Center survey, we're trending up, by the way. The fire department got us by half a point, killing it.
No competition.
But when you look at a statewide and just what's happening on a national scale and the perception of law enforcement, to have the Pensacola Police Department, the second highest rated division in the city, I think is pretty telling for us. With the courtesy, especially with I keep hitting courtesy because that's our biggest complaint against officers when we do get complaints is the discourtesy. That's a big one for us. As far as we measure it on the evaluations, I don't know that we necessarily hit on the evaluations as much as we should, and maybe that's something we'll hit with. So it's on our radar constantly, those 3 core values.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Others, what are your mission-based goals?
I think CRA is one of those departments that...
Ellen, can you scoot up to the... Sorry.
I think that the CRA is one of those departments that maybe a lot of people don't really understand. And our function is primarily to fight and prevent blight. So eliminate and prevent blight. In addition to that, that's probably the number one. In addition to that, it is to support affordable housing. It is to partner with the private sector to strengthen and stabilize the tax base. And for 30 years, I don't know if I'm talking mission or if I'm talking history, but anyway, those are our three goals. And if I were to say right now, our priorities are maintaining the improvements that we have made downtown, and then moving westward and northward with similar.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate that.
If you're looking for someone that comes to the fire department, right off the bat, fire prevention. If everybody did their job, then we'd basically be out of a job when it comes to the fire department. It's being more involved with the community and teaching, especially the younger generation, about fire prevention and safety. And the next step is always training. Houses are changing, furniture is changing, things burn differently. Construction is very different than it used to be. Block and mortar, now it's all wood. So ours is mainly fire prevention and then constantly training and keeping up with the new techniques.
At the Department of Sanitation, we provide a core service, and that's just customer service. There's not many other departments that arrive at your home 3 different times during the week to provide a core service of removing your garbage, your yard waste, or your recycling. When people come to count on you being there the day you're supposed to be there, put their container back in the place where they once had it, not do damage, so on and so forth. So we ranked pretty high, and this is taking no credit for myself because it all preceded me. But the department has a core value in that customers are number one, and those are the citizens.
Thank you.
Inspection services is looking at moving more towards the customer service aspect, where in the aspect of electronic plan submittal, online permitting, ease of access to where they don't have to come in, and it'll also take pressure off our staff as far as people lining up in front of them all the time. We're looking at several different software companies that offer these services, so that's one of the main goals we're looking forward to achieving, is lightening the load for us and making more ease of access and permitting for the public.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm hearing a lot, which is what I expected. There's always that overlap that happens when we look at the people, right? And a lot of the goals that we're hearing so far connect to the people, connect to the community, connect to that overall customer service, which I think everyone is your customer when it comes down to it, no matter where you work. So it's great to hear what that connection to the people looks like, how it looks different for CRA than it looks for inspection, than it looks for the fire department, as it should. And so hearing all of those pieces is where understanding that collaboration and that transparency of what our goals look like as a team really comes into play. What are some other goals? I want to hear as many as I possibly can. I, again, won't force you to talk, but I don't know what you don't share. Perfect.
Robbie kind of talked on us that moving into the computer side of all the departments, as the technology resource manager, we look at the security of the network, the security of the data, we want to make sure that everyone has access, but they only have the correct access. So we are constantly not only securing our network, but we're trying to secure the employees. We do a lot of employee testing. There's always a way in if we can keep everyone out to make sure our network's safe. But every new advantage that comes out now is usually something that has a technology back door. It's got to include into ours, so we're trying to find a ease of umbrella that allows everything to work together. Having everything mesh well comes across our desk.
Brenda.
It's Brenda.
Yeah. Yep. And we're spending some time together, Brenda, later this afternoon.
1 o'clock.
You got it down. You're ready to see it. Perfect. Other mission-based goals? Yes, ma'am. Amy.
So for the port, I think we really have two primary. One is on the customer service side, and that's to ensure that cargo moves on, off, and through the port safely, efficiently, and on time. And then the other is on the business development side. And for me, that is building a port that not only maximizes revenue to the port, but also creates jobs, economic impact, and quality of life benefits to the community.
I love quality of life benefits to the community because it's the thing that every single one of us does, but saying it and putting it out there makes a world of difference when you connect it back to the actual work that you're doing. So I love that. Thank you, Amy. Others, who else wants to share? Yes, ma'am.
So the finance department is a little bit different from the customer base that everyone else is. These people in this room are our customers. And so our job is to help facilitate and support governmental services and have sound financial positions.
But that's huge too, because if you aren't able to provide for the customers within this room, then they're not able to do their jobs either. So
Exactly.
It's a huge role.
Exactly.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Well, I'll share. Put the microphone on. And so human resources is very unique in the fact that we're kind of like financial services in the fact that HR touches every department citywide, every person citywide, at least those that fall underneath the mayor, the executive branch of the government. And so we touch those, but we also deal with the public. And so we are everywhere. We're involved with everything, or at least we should be. And so a lot of the actions and the initiatives and the things that we have done or that we are looking to do are structured or they're designed in a way to provide protections and coverage, reduce liabilities for the manager or the hiring entity is the city, as well as provide for the rights, privileges, benefits, and things that are offered to the employee to empower them, to help them be tied into the organization. We do many things like our employee recognition event and things to try and help build culture to get more people tied in. So it's not just we punch in, we punch out, we leave, but trying to get them actually into the idea of having pride in this effort that we do with all of our wonderful departments that do so much to keep the city as awesome as it is. And so we're all over the place.
Yes, you are. And I love that. One of the things that you mentioned, which I want to kind of highlight, is the employee piece. So keeping our employees engaged and connected and highlighting them. So as you guys know, the next 2 sessions after this will be employee focused. And the focus will be in actually asking our employees, what does that look like for you? Because sometimes we assume because we've been employees at some point in time, but we're not employees right now, we're leaders right now. And so that's where I'm really excited to get that input from each of your employees. I know each of you have identified the right people that should be coming to those sessions, but Edward hit the nail on the head, which is that overall engagement piece. And so from the HR perspective, always being involved in that and always being focused on that, and now getting that next level in the next couple weeks from our employees of what that looks like will be fantastic. So
Right, and there was some, with the survey that was done initially, there was lots of feedback that it seems like something so simple, but where's the employee luncheon? And so it was a once-a-year thing, that we'd come up with some money, and we would do this employee luncheon type thing. But there's all types of, and you would know this, there's all types of reports, there's all types of statistics that if you can increase employee engagement, it increases employee morale, it increases your retention rates, and so your turnover rates go down, your productivity goes up, your efficiency goes up, and so it's just a grander focus, and hopefully we'll get there on, we're not just keeping the wheels turning, but do we have the right size tire, the right kind of tire, even if it's the right size, is it, insert analogy here, but it's not just status quo,
right.
which is where we've been for a while.
Absolutely. And it takes all of us, right? It takes sessions like this to look at what that is. And it takes us being engaged as leaders. So, and I'm before I go into what I was going to ask, it's connected to this, but I want to make sure, is there anyone else that wants to provide feedback on their mission-based goals? Okay, it's definitely Friday. So, what and a follow-up to what Edward was saying is also what it looks like for you as leaders to be engaged. So I would love to hear, as we're talking about mission-based goals, I also want to talk about your mission-based drive. So what does that look like? What brings you into work every day? Why are you here in this session? It was not mandatory. I asked you to join me, but it was not mandatory. So why are you here? What does your work look like in the city? What drives you every single day? Like, what is that drive that your employees are seeing? I would love to hear that from each of you. Don't all talk at once. I know you want to.
For me anyways, I think it's a huge sense of pride. In 29 years now in law enforcement. I'm passionate about the profession of policing. And everybody knows we've had a pretty big turnover, manpower turnover. So we're a very young police department. And when I walk in the front door in the morning and I get to interact with these rookies, these 22, 23-year-old kids that have been doing it for 6 months or are brand new, and they made their first dope arrest, I'm like, hey, Chief, I just made, look at this, and it's like, that's just awesome. Be that enthusiastic, and when it's your 100th arrest, that kind of stuff. So the millennials, they bring so much more excitement. They police differently than we do. But I think I'm really excited about where we're going as an agency. We have our command staff. I'm looking at Captain Davis sitting here, Captain Chrisman. I got 2 other ones that are on vacation, otherwise they'd be here as well. We all came up together, so there's a huge sense of camaraderie. It's a difficult job, it's a dangerous job, and I think we do a pretty good job handling that externally, and then internally, that courtesy is a big deal for us.
That's awesome. It's interesting. I love that you say understanding that excitement through the eyes of that younger generation. How many of you have like grandchild or a niece or someone that's like under the age of 2 in your life right now? So I have a niece. I do not have any children. That is dangerous for me to have children right now. But I do have a niece, and she's 2. And it's interesting to me to see the things that excite her, right? It's that pride that she has for, putting the milk back in the refrigerator. She's really strong for 2 years old. But, those little things that at one point in time for us were a huge sense of accomplishment, and that sometimes we don't see until we see it through the eyes of someone else. And I love that you say that, because I don't want us to lose that sense of excitement, that sense of pride for the things that we are now remembering from the beginning of our career. So thank you so much for highlighting that.
I think it's important. We do a pretty good job. They ask why a lot. And, initially you get some of that pushback from guys that have been doing it for the old school mentality. I think we do a very good job. Sometimes asking why is good, especially in law enforcement. You get a new set of eyes coming in. And I'm trying to think of the number of programs that we've had over just the last 2 years and stuff that we've purchased, equipment for the most part. And nearly 100% of it came in requests from the officers. So they have a voice. They can say, hey, Chief, I think this is a good idea. We'll mull it over, and if it's feasible and affordable, I'm looking at you, Vet, we incorporate it. And I think that's a part of, they give them an opportunity to ask why and then be responsive to it can be frustrating sometimes. It's a process they get to go through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Other reasons that you do what you do, other passions, mission-focused work.
Kristie, I'll go.
Yes, sir.
With the city council, for me, it's for us to get better. I think in the past, when you have 7 different elected officials who all have different constituency and different goals and different methodologies to how they get to where they're going, I think we've done a relatively poor job in the past of working with and collaborating with all the staff to ensure that, for instance, pieces of legislation that they're passing are actually doable by the people who are going to have to do it. I've had council members talk about, well, all we need to do is pass a piece of legislation and they have to do it. Well, having to do it and being able to do it are 2 different things. And having been on that other side of the fence of having to do stuff, it's really counterproductive to pass a piece of legislation that functionally just can't work. So that's one of my 3 years here goals has been to be more collaborative, to be able to give the department heads a heads up if something is coming down the pipe from one of the council members, so that they're never caught unawares. I'm not a gotcha person. I don't want any department head member to be at a city council meeting and have a gotcha kind of thing. Now, I may have failed a few times at that, but so that's really what drives me, is to try to in the juggling the cats, try to juggle them in a method that is most efficient for all the city.
Thank you. It's interesting. It reminds me a lot of managing physician relationships in healthcare. There's a lot of moving pieces of the way that people, style, I should say, is probably the best way to put it. So I love that you say that, because that, I feel like, is a lot of what everyone does, right? We all have a lot of different people that we're having to collaborate with. We have a lot of different priorities. My priority may be different than your priority. Your priority may be different than your employee's priority. But I 100% believe the more that we align behind what drives our focus, and then the more transparent we are with what our focus is, so what those goals are and what those priorities look like, and sharing those with people, the more we're able to provide that more collaborative work. What is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, it's not just me, right?
It's not just
Okay. I was like, it's just in my head, which has happened before. Awesome. Other things that drive you, mission-focused work. Yes, ma'am.
I would have to say for me, and Edward kind of elaborated on this as well, with us having both the outsiders, which is the public, as well as internal customers. For me, employee satisfaction is a driver for me. Ideally, with our performance management, I want our employees to feel like, we're promoting an environment that's going to help grow them and help fill in just their ability to provide more for the city, more for their departments, more for their employees in terms of managers and supervisors, and more for the public. So ideally, when I go out and I speak with employees and I learn about what their backgrounds are, or I speak with managers about the goals that they have, I want to see where that can take them as far as them being satisfied and able to actually illustrate that and even speak on it. I mean, I like to hear, I see where this is going, I'm on board with this, I feel comfortable with this, I'm happy with where this is taking us. That's what I'd like to see more of.
I love that. So when you guys, as a spin-off of that, because I think what you said is absolutely perfect, which is working at that level with the employees and figuring out, like, what do you want? Like, what's going to drive you? So do you guys remember, and this may be many years ago, I know it was many years ago for me, when you started your first job? And so in thinking about when you started your first job, think about how connected or disconnected you were to the mission of that job. Did you even know the mission of the job? Did you understand what the goals were? Was that shared with you? And using that to help drive, as a leader now, how am I ensuring that my employees, whether it was a good or a bad experience, are either having that positive connection that I had at my first job, or not having that negative disconnection that I had at my first job because no one shared that with me. So using that, I think, is spot on, Renee, and I love that.
And I think even with, the way that you started the meeting where you had the different departments say, what their goals are, what their specific goals are, I like to see that when they're identifying the goals for their employees, because you want their goals ultimately to match what the department goals are, which now I have a clearer understanding. When I know what I'm looking for, I can see, this is exactly what they want from their employee. Is their employee giving them that? Right. And then ultimately, is that helping to build the city, which is our everyone goal here.
Which is awesome. I know Renee and I are going to be spending some time together next week. I'm really excited about it. So one of the things that I love is looking at our performance management systems and how that's connecting to our goals and ways that, because we can always look at ways that we can drive that even more. And I think Renee and the HR team have done a phenomenal job in making sure we've got a system in place, because as we know, we didn't have one before.
Absolutely.
And so now it's all about using that and optimizing it to the best that we can. I'm so excited about that time that we'll get to spend together. Awesome. Thank you, Renee. Other things that are driving, so mission-based focus, mission-based work. Anyone else want to share?
I'll go.
What?
Why is that?
I'm just amazed. I know. Go, please, go ahead.
No, I know, right? I always wanted to leave the department better than how I found it. And that's kind of been my dedication and drive, is to follow my grandfather, job worth doing, or do it well, see it all the way to the end. And that's been my dedication. And one of the things I want to instill with our guys is the compassion aspect of the job. That, we go out and we put fires out, we might go to medicals and help people out, but we want the follow through. We got your family member to the hospital, but we also are going to make sure your stove is turned off, lock the doors, get the keys. If a family member needs a ride to the hospital, we're going to work that out. So just going above and beyond what's expected and do a little bit more. So that's what I'm hoping to do. That's why I stay here.
I love it. You said one of my favorite statements, which is leave it better than how I got there. And that's, I think, that is the core of leadership in and of itself. You guys have probably been in those situations where you've been with I use quotes, leader who is really focused about themselves. They're focused about that next level. They're focused about doing everything to lift themselves up. And they miss the opportunity to do exactly that, which is, but what am I leaving? What's that legacy? And that's why I always ask people, what is your mission? Like, we all have our own internal mission. We have something that's driving our work. But if you can't verbalize it and if you can't say what it is, and if it doesn't look like the question is, like, does it look like your legacy? Like, what is that? So I absolutely love that you said it. It really is one of my favorite statements. You win the gold star for the day. You're welcome. You don't actually get anything, but thank you so much. Others.
So I'll share. So one of the things that drives me, one of the things of interest, how I even got here. So I've been here 5 years too. And so when the mayor hired me from Tampa, there was a lot of low-hanging fruit. And so with the last administration, the city changed its whole identity, and I still don't think we've established what that is. What does that look like? From civil service to a strong mayor form of government. There was, as we mentioned before, if there was a department that was doing a performance management or some type of evaluation, there was no rhyme or reason, there was no way to justify it if we were challenged. And so that was one of the things that I was told before I got hired. We want a performance management system. Are our rules and regulations up to speed? What do our pay plans look like? Do we need to do a pay study? Our job descriptions, I think all of us could agree, if not your job description, probably one of your employees or somebody that works for you is probably not accurate. Well, that's a problem if we get challenged. And so there's so much to do to improve. And that's just on the paperwork side of things, let alone the culture side of things I think we have a good sense of identity in we're the fire department, we're the police department, we're Pensacola Energy, but there's not a we are the city type of mentality. And so that's ultimately where I would like to try and get us to go. And with the mindset of serving the customers, and we all do a really good job, but if you make eye contact with somebody, you say hi, or how are you doing, or has anyone helped you, or so we don't necessarily have that. Even walking around City Hall, you'll see where people just don't say hi, they just pass. And so the more you do that, then it becomes kind of a habit, and really lightens the mood and makes people feel appreciated and recognizes. And we've got much work to do on both ends, and that's something I'm passionate about. So that's kind of why I'm here, and some of the initiatives that I'm pushing forward. That's kind of the rhyme, the reason on why I want us to get there.
I love that. I think the great thing to know about Pensacola that we all see is you can go to Walmart and run into someone that you've met, like Renee and I ran into each other outside of City Hall. And I was like, oh, hello, Renee, nice to see you. But it's, that's the vibe that you get in Pensacola as a whole. And bringing that to the mission, vision, and values that we represent within our everyday work is exactly what I'm connecting the dots to what you're saying there, Edward, and I love it. So we talked earlier about when I work with organizations, one of the first things that I talk about are what are your goals? One of the things that either goes hand in hand with it or right after that is, okay, so how do they connect to your mission? And so there's the conversation, I've had this conversation with a few of you of, what are the mission, vision, and values of your department? What does that look like for the city as a whole? I think there's a really cool opportunity for us as a leadership group to collaborate on what that should be. Whereas we do have, mission and vision that's been stated for the city of Pensacola. What does that look like, though, as city leaders? How are we connecting on that? What are our values? Understanding the police department values are phenomenal, but understanding the values for the city as a whole, what does that look like? The other key thing are standards. So just like what Edward mentioned is, the concept of saying hello to people or looking people in the eye is not necessarily a common concept for people. It's, we consider it, manners and, just having good behavior, but you would be surprised at how many people don't get that or don't understand that or their culture doesn't support that. And so the simplicity of putting aside standards, I call them standards of behavior. We call them within my company standards of behavior. What do those standards look like? The simplicity of if you see someone walking down the hallway, you lift your head and you say hello. Or there's been even healthcare organizations that I've had that literally say if you are walking anywhere, you put your phone down. Like you're not on your phone texting. If it is an emergency, you need to step away from where you are. But those things and identifying what that looks like as a whole is something that I would like for us to really think about as leaders, and as part of the recommendations for me, I try and see as a city, how can we start to improve that level of accountability? It's the simplicity of what are our goals and how are we sharing them, and what are our standards and how are we measuring ourselves against those and what it looks like. So I love that you say that, and it's reverberated in everything that you guys say about what your passion is, what your mission is, what drives you. Almost every single one of you mentioned that customer service aspect of it, which connects directly to that mission-driven focus and that mission-driven drive, I guess I can say. Thank you for that. Others that want to share anything about your mission-driven focus or your passion?
And to piggyback on what I said, just to add a little bit more.
Please do.
I've shared with the powers that be that we're all high-level managers and we all do our jobs well, but the difficulty of having that unified front when there's been 5 or 6 different people leading the charge. And so if you have these different directions that come in, kind of short term, and so if we're all kind of running around like chickens, you know, with the head cut off, it makes it difficult, but we've made great strides, and even with our union negotiations and the things that we've been able to do for our non-represented employees, I think at this point we've negotiated at least 2 agreements with each of the unions, and the lawsuits and the internal, you know, just riffraff where we're not getting along with ourselves, let alone being a unified front to the public that we serve. If there's turmoil inside, then that just, you know, kind of makes everybody unhappy. And so those are much less. And hopefully with the new administration, we'll add some stability and some consistency. And what does it mean as far as how we're going forward?
You know, you bring up a really good point. And just out of curiosity, several of you have worked, I've talked with all of you at this point, have worked at other positions other than this. But I mean, how many of you, you know, you've gone through some administrative changes here, clearly. But I mean, in other jobs that you've ever had, how many of you have ever gone through a change in leadership, change in environment, change in people that you're working next to? And when you think about that, oftentimes it changes kind of everything that you're doing, right? And so there's a consistency that can come when we develop the culture that we want to promote, and that culture can stand regardless of what changes happen. And so I truly believe that this is one of those steps in doing that. I think you guys have, again, I can't speak for days about the amazing work that each of you are doing for the city, because you've told me about it and you've shared it. But even beyond that, the community talks about it and it's shared that way. But using these opportunities to set those levels of accountability of, you know, regardless of whoever is in this role, what do our goals look like? And how does that cascade out to the rest of my leaders? Regardless of whoever is in this role, what do our standards look like? What do our values look like? And how does that cascade out? And so that's what I really want these types of forums, which I, again, as I've mentioned, my recommendation will be for us to put together more of a standardized leadership forum format so that we can have more of those collaborative conversations and really actionably build that culture that you guys are already promoting, but build some sustainability around it. Does that make sense in thinking about? I'm seeing some head nods. So for those of you listening to the live stream, there are some head nods in the room. That's really what I'm excited about, and excited about the work that we've already started together. And that is really the basis of my focus from the marriage transition team perspective, is really continuing to drive our culture to that next level. So I know we've got about 5 minutes until we open it up to public input. One thing that I wanted to mention, I mean, I've mentioned this kind of briefly, but wanted to go back to it, is as we look at the goals that we are trying to achieve, the goals that we've set for ourselves, also looking at the measurement behind it. So, you know, I asked Chief Leiter, like, how do you measure that? How are you measuring courtesy? And so one of my asks will be outside of this meeting, so I'm going to send out some follow-up at the beginning of next week to all of our leadership team, is going to be, if you were to identify what your top 5 goals are, I would want to hear what they are and how you're measuring it. Because those are the key things right now, is not just setting goals, but setting measurable goals that are based off of some type of standard that's helping us achieve success outside of ourselves. So what that looks like are benchmark standards beyond just what I've been measuring against myself for the past 10 years. That's great, but if we're wanting to achieve success, what does it look like to measure against an industry standard? What does it look like to see if I know that where I'm achieving right now is the 50th percentile for Pensacola, where I'm achieving right now, what does it look like as far as percentile for the nation? And so those are things that I'm wanting us to really drive. I know we've got some measures and metrics in place, but just reviewing them and seeing how we can maybe make some updates and adjustments to ensure we're measuring against things that are going to continue to drive us to that next level. So that's where I'm really excited about us looking into and kind of taking our goals to the next level. But also, at the end of the day, and sitting with each of you, I know each of you are driven, passionate leaders, so it's taking ourselves to the next level too. So before we open up, I'm going to give to public input, we've got a couple of people I know here. I did want to make sure there wasn't anything outstanding, questions, concerns, because I am going to rate the meeting as well, which I forgot to do last time. But questions, concerns, things that you want to make sure that you share. For those of you that didn't get a chance to share your goals or your mission-based drive and focus, I would love to open up to hear those as well.
Can I just make a comment real
Yes.
quick? With the goals, so we have our courtesy, integrity, professionalism, and we have our rules and regs and general orders. And they're divided into our outward courtesy to the public and but also inward. You have to be courteous with fellow employees. I'm just, Mr. Sisson had hit on it, and I think some of else hit on it here. Just maybe look at how we measure it externally. That's what you're probably going to get. We do a good job. But internally also, maybe how we're measuring those same goals internally. You guys do a great job. We have a work stoppage. They're within 15 minutes. I've got somebody from Tech Resources standing in my office or calling me on the phone, and that, so just a
Absolutely.
word of wisdom.
Yeah, and that's...
I didn't say anything about our goals because we're an internal group, so we have a very limited staff for what we support. Every person in this room has a computer, has a cell phone, has a desk phone, has a body camera, has every bit of technology or software you use to do your job. If you have any of that fail, it can be a work stoppage. So our drive is to make sure that we do not have work stoppages. We have redundancy. We have things in place, but we also have the people. You can have all the things in the world for redundancy, but you have to have the people available. And we have ownership of every little piece. Everyone has their own part. We are one deep in a lot of places that's kind of limiting us, and we back each other up, but that is what we have to work with. That's why we're here every day. And I mean, we have ownership to what we consider our family, because these are the people that are going to be calling us, and we know every one of you. So this is why we're here.
You do great. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say I would challenge, though, that knowing your goals is even more important because you do touch everyone. And so that's even more reason why sharing that and understanding like what work stoppage looks like for you versus what work stoppage looks like for everyone else. Because we know 100% perfection is not achievable, period, nor should it be a goal. But understanding that from you and understanding, well, let me talk to you a little bit more about what that really means from the technology resources side, I think is even more important. So I love that you shared that piece and why it's so important to your team. Yes, ma'am.
I think something that you hit on a couple of times earlier was the accountability. I think for everyone to just take ownership of what they're responsible for, and for the others to feel like they can hold them accountable will just make everyone's lives easier. I know for me it would be if I know that, that these things have been tasked and I can literally bet 100% that they will be done, that's going to make everybody's life easier. So that's where I would like to see everybody get to, being responsible for what they're required to do and being held accountable.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add something to what Brenda said.
Will you? Sorry. I'm sorry, Helen.
I wanted to just add something to what Brenda said. I mean, she says that all of her customers are internal, and they do a fabulous job, especially me. They know I'm just not a techie person. But I have to say that they are responsible for not only the internal, but if they're not helping us they help us to extend outward to the external customers. And without them, we couldn't do that. So they do serve both.
I love that. And that is absolutely right. Sometimes it gets, we see what we're doing and we see the work we're doing and the tasks that we're doing, but you hit the nail on the head is that greater picture. Oftentimes you don't know who you're impacting until many, many years later, and there's a huge impact that each of you, and especially departments that identify themselves as internals, like you may be, but there's a bigger impact way beyond just what you're doing within the city. And what you're doing within the city departments is phenomenal, but you are absolutely right, Helen, like there's such a bigger impact even beyond that. I love that you mentioned that. Anyone else have anything else that they want to add? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I've been kind of quiet. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so 2 years ago when I came on board, it was my goal to, like he said, make the communication center better than when I came. Took the responsibility to help make everyone accountable. And not just everyone accountable, but myself. I could not do my job if it was not for, I'll start with my lieutenant, my captain, my chief, IT, human resources, the fire department training. We have a big area, but just a small impact in the city. We touch every citizen some way or another every day. And one thing that Mr. Sisson has said to me last year that has still stuck with me, he has come to the Telecommunicator Week. We have that every year in April. He walked in and he said he could tell a difference in that comm center. My goal was to bring up the morale. And we have done a good job with that. It's a daily struggle. So I'm very lucky to be part of this wonderful team. And some days I hope they're lucky to have me.
I feel like they definitely are. That is excellent. And a perfectly positive note to end this session on. So I'd love to open it up to public input. Do we have anyone that was providing public input? All right. Okay. We'll take it. That's fine. So one thing that I did not do at the last meeting, and someone called me out on it, I was like, thank you for telling me that, so I did not rate the meeting last time. So I will rate the meeting this time. So we'll just go around. We'll start with Edward. Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, please don't ever talk to me again, you're horrible, and 10 being, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
So because of my job and where I stand, a solid 8, because there's always room for improvement.
Agreed. Thank you.
I'd say it's about an 8 or a 9. I enjoyed hearing from the other people that work for the city, get a narrow focus of just what the fire department does and work with the police department often, but I don't really get to hear the other ones. So thank you for bringing us together.
I would say it would be a 7, 8, yeah. Learning what other departments do is, and their goals and missions is critical.
Now, don't let me skew the goals, because if it was performance evaluations, you guys would be like, all 5s. And so if it's a 10, it's okay.
No, you're not.
I would rate it a 9.
I would say an 8.
I'm gonna break them. I think it's a 10. I think having everybody, all the department directors in here having this conversation is awesome. 10.
I'm gonna follow up with a 9, and I do like the communication between the leadership of the city coming together.
I'll also go with a 9, just the interaction of all of the department heads coming together and assistants to really understand that we count on finance, we count on technology resources, count on our dispatchers to get us where we need to be. Just bringing us all in the same room is what's important.
Go with a 9, just echoing what everyone else has said, because police and fire, we see each other all the time, but we don't always see the other people, but we can't go out and do our job if technology resources hasn't done theirs. We can't provide the service that we need to provide at the level we provide it if all the cogs aren't working together.
I'd say a 10. I think it's a very healthy conversation that we're all having, and I think the leadership of the meeting was very good.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for my late attendance. I also attended the economic development session this morning, which went really well also. But I just I'll have to give it a 10 also, because I always enjoy time with colleagues and just the input of everyone. Appreciate this setup. It's great.
I would say a 9.5.
Helen.
And no, I think it's marvelous. I think it's getting us to think about things in the right direction. I have my reasons for keeping the half.
I would say between an 8 and a 9.
Give it an 8.5. All communication is good within an organization, and it was good today.
I say 10.
Because Edward thinks I grade too easily, I'm going to say a 10.
I was like, wait a minute.
Always good to share. I'd say an 8.
I would go with a 10. Completely enjoyed your meeting. I would come to any others. Thank you.
I'd say a 9, because it really highlighted the interconnectivity of all different departments and all the heads.
I would say a 9 because it started the conversation, and I think that's almost better than sliced bread.
I will also echo a 9, what Renee said. It's the start of the conversation to get everyone to realize what needs to be said and done.
Last but not least, I'm going to butter you up. I'm just kidding.
8.75.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, I'm going to stay around for a little bit. If you guys, just so you know, the Transition Pensacola website will be putting the meeting minutes and then the live stream recording from this. So if you want to go back, or if anyone asks you, where can I see, since I didn't get a chance to go. And then also don't forget to invite your employees. I make a big emphasis on those employees who keep you up at night for the wrong reason. Please do not invite them to the session. I do not want to be kept up at night for the wrong reasons. So focus on that. Those people who will bring some productive conversation. But if you need anything, I'll be here for probably the next 5 to 10 minutes. So, thank you guys so much for your time.
Thanks, Kristie.
Thank you.